You spent 30 years terrified of running out of money in retirement, so you saved, you budgeted, you clipped coupons at 70 years old with $1 million sitting in your IRA. And here's the twist nobody tells you. You were never going to run out. The real risk was never the running out. It was the dying rich, with the IRS standing at the door, hand out, the day you go. There's a name for this. Financial planners call it the consumption gap, the gap between what retirees could safely spend and what they actually spend. Most retirees underspend by so much that they die with more money than they retired with. Not a little more, often 2, 3, 4 times more. That sounds like a win. It is not, because every dollar sitting in that account was never really all yours. Uncle Sam has been a silent partner in your 401k the entire time, and when you die still holding it, he collects in full, all at once. No mercy, no negotiation. And today, I'm going to show you why the fear of running out quietly turns into the fear you should actually have, and the freight tax train that's coming for the money you were too afraid to spend. Let's start with the data, because this isn't a guess, it's documented. Michael Kitchis, one of the most respected researchers in financial planning, studied thousands of real retiree portfolios. His finding? The vast majority of retirees spend less each year in retirement than they did the year before, even when their portfolio is growing. Not shrinking, growing. They're sitting on more money at 85 than they had at 65. Why? Because for 30 years, the entire retirement industry trained you to save and never spend. Every article, every advisor conversation, every worry about will I run out pointed one direction. Hoard. Nobody trained you for the second half of the equation. Spend it before someone else decides how it gets spent for you. And someone else is closer than you think. It's the IRS. And here's the mechanism, plain and simple. Every dollar sitting in your traditional 401k or IRA has never been taxed, not once. It grew tax-deferred, which sounds generous, until you understand deferred doesn't mean forgiven. It means later, and later has a deadline. That deadline is called your required minimum distribution age, 73 for most people right now. Starting that year, the IRS forces you to withdraw a calculated percentage of that account every single year, whether you need the money or not, whether you want to spend it or not. Doesn't matter. It's forced income, forced tax, on the government's schedule, not yours. I call this the freight tax train. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't care if you were planning to leave that money to your kids, or if you'd rather have spent it traveling at 70 instead of RMDing it out at 83 into a higher tax bracket you didn't plan for. The train arrives on schedule and takes its cut. Here's where it gets worse if you die still holding a large balance. Since the Secure Act, most non-spouse beneficiaries, your kids, inherit that account under a 10-year rule. They don't get to stretch withdrawals across their lifetime anymore. They have 10 years to drain the entire account, and every withdrawal is taxed as ordinary income, stacked right on top of whatever they're already earning in their peak working years. Picture it. Your daughter, mid-career, high income already, suddenly forced to add a 6-figure IRA withdrawal on top of her salary for 10 straight years. Because you were too afraid to spend the money yourself and left it to compound instead. You didn't leave her a gift. You left her a tax bracket problem with a countdown clock. Think about what that means in real numbers. She's pulling in $150,000 a year from her own career. She inherits a $600,000 IRA. She now has to drain that in 10 years. $60,000 a year minimum, stacked right on top of her salary. That's $210,000 in taxable income the year she least needs it. And the IRS doesn't care that you meant it as a gift. They see income, they tax income. This is the real cost of the consumption gap. It's not just you could have taken that cruise. It's that the money you protected out of fear becomes the money the IRS taxes hardest, either from you at RMD age or from your kids at their highest earning years, compressed into a decade instead of spread across a lifetime. So what's the fix? It's not spend recklessly. It's giving that money permission to leave the qualified account on your terms, on a schedule you control, at tax rates you choose, instead of a schedule the IRS controls, at rates set by law the year you turn 73. This is where a protected tax-free container comes in, structured under IRC Section 7702, the same tax code section that governs properly designed cash value life insurance. Some people call the specific tool an IUL, Indexed Universal Life. Here's what matters. Money moved into this container in your pre-RMD window, the years between now and 73, grows with a market floor. If the market goes up, you make more money. If the market goes down, you don't lose any money from that. And when it's time to access it, it comes out as policy loans, not taxable withdrawals. There's also a piece almost nobody explains. The cash value inside a properly structured life insurance policy is classified as a Tier 1 asset, the same category banks use for cash and U.S. Treasury bonds. Banks hold billions in this structure. They call it BOLI, Bank-Owned Life Insurance. If it's good enough for JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America, it's worth understanding why. Move money out of the qualified account gradually inside the standard deduction arbitrage window into the protected tax-free container, and you convert money the IRS is waiting to tax at 73 into money you can spend tax-free on your schedule starting now. You solve the consumption gap and the freight tax train problem with the same move. Let's put real numbers on it because vague strategy talk doesn't help anyone. Say you're 66. You've got $1 million in a traditional IRA. You're not touching it yet. Social Security and a small pension cover your bills, so the IRA just sits there, growing untaxed, quietly getting bigger every year until 73 hits. Here's the problem hiding inside that plan. The bigger that account gets before 73, the bigger your forced RMD is the year the freight train arrives. And RMDs don't stop at 73. They climb every single year after that, based on IRS life expectancy tables, whether the market cooperates or not. A market downturn the same year you're forced to withdraw a fixed percentage is one of the cruelest sequencing problems in retirement planning, and almost nobody explains it to people until it's already happened to them. Now compare that to using the 7 years between 66 and 73 on purpose. Each year you move a deliberate, calculated slice of that IRA out, sized to land inside your standard deduction, so you're often paying little to nothing in federal tax on the money you move. For a married couple over 65, the standard deduction in 2024 is over $30,000. That's $30,000 you can potentially move out of a tax-deferred account, pay near zero federal tax on, and redirect into a protected tax-free container every single year for as many years as your window stays open. That's not a loophole. That's using the tax code exactly the way it was written. That money goes into the protected tax-free container. 7 years later, at 73, your IRA balance is meaningfully smaller, which means your forced RMD is smaller, which means less of your Social Security gets taxed, which means you stay in a lower bracket for the rest of your life. Meanwhile, the money you already moved is sitting in a policy with a market floor, growing available to you tax-free whenever you actually want to spend it. On a cruise, on your grandkids, on the life you were too scared to fund out of the IRA directly. That's the whole strategy in one sentence. Stop waiting for the IRS to empty the account for you at the worst possible time and start emptying it yourself on purpose at the best possible time, while it's still your decision to make. The year the math finally works in your favor. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, signed July 4, 2025, permanently extended the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act individual rates. For the first time in nearly a decade, retirees can plan with certainty rather than guessing what Congress will do next. The brackets are set. The standard deduction is set. The $6,000 senior bonus deduction is set, which means the zero tax withdrawal window is not a moving target anymore. It is a defined number you can plan around with precision. A married couple, both over 65, can extract $39,800 from a traditional IRA in a single year at zero federal tax. 8 years of that window, used deliberately, is $318,400 permanently rescued from the RMD machinery before the freight tax train ever reaches full speed. That is not theory. That is arithmetic the tax code made available to you and the financial industry never finished explaining. The consumption gap is what creates the space. The pre-RMD window is when the space exists. The protected tax-free container is where the rescued capital goes. 3 pieces. 1 strategy. The retirees who die with too much did not fail because they saved wrong. They failed because nobody showed them how to use what they had built, while they still had time to use it. Here's your mirror moment. You were never going to run out of money. 50 years of save more, spend less made sure of that. The real danger was always the opposite. Dying with too much sitting in an account built to be taxed at the worst possible moment, for you or for your kids. You already know this somewhere. You felt that flicker of guilt looking at the account balance and thinking, I could actually use some of this. I could actually enjoy some of this. That instinct wasn't wrong. It was right. It just needed a plan behind it instead of fear. The people who figured this out early, the ones who gave themselves permission to move money deliberately on their own schedule before 73 forced the issue, they didn't run out. They spent better, left more, and handed their kids an inheritance instead of a tax problem. If you have $500,000 or more sitting in a 401k or IRA, this isn't a decision to make alone on a Tuesday night with a spreadsheet. Book a private, one-on-one strategy session. We'll run your numbers, show you exactly what your RMDs look like at 73, and show you what moving some of that money into a protected tax-free container does to that number, and to what your kids inherit. Rescue, reclaim, retire richer.